administration moving ahead full steam to try to switch many of our everyday appliances from gas to electric. From cars and stoves to water heaters and air conditioners, officials claim these new regulations will save consumers money and save the planet from global warming.
This is the Eye for an Eye channel. Welcome to today's show. We know that they're using the climate agenda for a lot of reasons. It is ultimately to enslave humanity under the false impression that there is a climate crisis going on. Now, a lot of people, without even seeing any effects of the climate, have been convinced that it's actually real. This shows you how real mind control actually is. Other people believe that it's real because they've experienced weather manipulation and they're not familiar with HAARP technology and other technologies that the government has had in place since the 40s, including the earthquake machine created by a guy with the last name of Tesla. That sound familiar? Yeah, who created an earthquake machine. So they have the ability to manipulate the weather. And now, of course, with the propaganda on top of it, anytime that there's any type of difference in heat, difference in weather, or abnormally, I should say, in weather, whether it's hotter out, whether it's colder out, whether the wind is blowing one way versus the other, they're going to tie it into climate, and they're going to keep using that term anytime. Oh, it's extra rainy this month, climate change, right? Meanwhile, nobody ever looks above them and notices what's really also responsible for climate change, or at least some of the problems with climate manipulation. That is the chemtrails that they are bathing us with up in the sky that don't look like clouds. I mean, I once again had a beautiful blue sky day the day that I'm recording this, the morning that I'm recording this video. And of course, a few hours later, by noon, the sky was completely littered with trails in the sky. Yet, of course, as long as people are looking down and looking at their devices, they never notice the manipulation and geoengineering that is occurring. So we have all the technologies that they have in place. They have obviously manipulated the weather over and over again with things like Katrina. These are all things that we could all link to the climate agenda, which are all linked, of course, to HAARP and weather manipulation, as well as geoengineering, like I just said. So that being said, one of the ideas of all of this, what their ultimate plan is, to enslave people with a carbon footprint. On top of the carbon footprint, they are going to convince people to start getting rid of everything that is gas power, telling them that it has a problem, that it's going to cause a problem for the environment. Thus, people are going to fall in line because we have a lot of narcissists out there who like to pat themselves on the back and think that they're doing what the right thing to do is because the celebrities are telling them to do it. So then they're just repeating it. Then anybody who doesn't agree is a conspiracy nut or a bad person. This is how this whole psyop is working. And these idiots fall in line, not realizing that all of the new technologies that they're putting in that are not gas powered and are electric are going to fail. The electric vehicle can only drive X amount of distance before it needs to be recharged, which takes a period of time. You're going to be on a what they would call a carbon limit. Okay, so whatever you want to do, you're going to be at a carbon limit. You're only going to be allowed to drive X amount of miles per month. This is enslavement, right? The other thing that they're doing, which leads me to what this video is about, is the removal of gas stoves, gas in general. And I'm not talking about the gas that comes out of the mouths of people like Joe Biden, who just passed this latest development to put heat pumps in and remove anything else that's gas powered from your home. They want to remove things that will allow you to be independent of them, which means they don't want you to be able to start a fire in your home with a wood burning stove or a fireplace. They don't want you to do anything that isn't under their control, because this is going to be a worldwide global enslavement. So what they're doing now is Biden has invoked emergency wartime powers to boost heat pump production with $170 million in federal funds in administration's latest push to replace gas appliances. They hate gas, not because it affects the climate. They hate gas because it allows you to be free, independent, and out of their reach. On electricity, everything can be documented, monitored, and followed. That's why they want you to get, and again, remember, anytime the government gives you something for free, be suspicious. Canada's giving away those free smart thermostats. That's because they want to be able to control the thermostats. There's smart meters being put on homes, which also could blow your home up at any notice, which are just giving out massive amounts of EMF frequencies, okay? Those will be monitored. You'll only be allowed to use X amount of electricity per day. And if you have a smart meter, they'll be shutting your power off the second that it goes above what you're allowed to use. So you'll be spending your day rationing on how much electricity you use. You'll be thinking you're doing this for the environment, and you won't be. You'll be doing it like a prisoner. This is how they expect and want everyone to live. Our way of life is about to change, and it's being enforced and enabled by the zombies that we're living among for not waking up and realizing this because they're too distracted in fighting with other fellow civilians And all in all, you have Republicans siding with the climate agenda. You have liberals, and don't act, anyone out there who is a conservative, don't act like the conservatives in Congress aren't for the climate agenda. They're pretending just like they were at the magic potion. Like, it's a little aggressive. They're still on board. You don't hear any of these people talk about what it's really about. Show me people in Congress talking about the carbon footprint, the equality pay, where everybody has a carbon footprint, everybody has equal pay, and all this stuff is going to be distributed in a bank account, which is monitored and controlled, and you only be allowed to move X amount of spaces per day. They've been conditioning people with things like the iFit bracelet to monitor how often they walk, how many steps they take. This is what it's all about. Right here, the climate agenda. People don't seem to be able to link them together. They don't see how all of this ties in with everything else, with the outbreak, the magic potion, the conditioning of being quarantined, okay? Your home is your prison. And the electric stuff and not the gas-powered stuff is what's going to keep you in prison, because they're going to shut it off at a moment's notice, and they're going to be doing stuff like this, which is pushing for heat pumps. Now, I don't expect anyone out there to come to my channel for HVAC advice, okay? I don't expect you to come to me for advice, period. But specifically HVAC. Yeah, there's a lot of channels out there that talk about HVAC and heat pumps and all that type of stuff. But I know a lot of people out there don't get it. But a lot of people might actually have somewhat of understanding of what a heat pump is and why a heat pump is a scam. Now, I'm going to show you some experts from YouTube talk about the heat pump. As you can see the headlines here with Biden wanting to make sure that gas is removed from the home for the climate so you can get heat pumps in your home. But they don't tell you this about heat pumps. One, it's just as expensive. But number two, these things are not efficient. And that's the key word. Because when it gets too cold outside, it's common knowledge and common sense that a heat pump will not heat your home the way you need it to heat your home. Thus, you're going to get sick. You're going to get hypothermia. Your children are going to get sick. And all because of stupidity. Once this stuff is installed in new homes, in your home, you are screwed. Once you stop putting in gas-powered things or appliances, or once you stop and don't put in wood-burning stoves and things like that, or they try to take them away, then we're all screwed. Everybody right now, if they own a home, should be putting in wood-burning stove. I'm telling you, I mean, you should be figuring out how to do it. You can install it yourself, okay? They do not want you to. I've talked to many people in this field, and they are talking about how in different states, how the government is coming in and regulating this stuff, and by trying to remove it, they're trying not to be overly suspicious, so they're making it even more difficult to put wood-burning stoves in. They're making the measurements and things on homes so difficult that it's impossible for them to even put one in if they wanted to. The inspectors will not approve it, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, eventually these will be completely banned. I've covered it over the years, and that's by design. So when you start banning these things, people don't realize that the heat pumps don't work. So in other words, you're getting rid of your heat and your furnace in your home, thinking you're getting something that's going to be cheaper when it's not. They're obviously deliberately spiking the price of gas over and over again so that they could make electricity and gas be one and the same as far as prices go, but gas has always been cheaper. They never tell you, by the way, about how expensive electricity is for your car, for your electric vehicle, et cetera. They forget about that because people don't think. So let me show you some of the experts out there in the field talking about heat pumps. And, when it gets a little cold outside, those things ain't going to work. So you better bundle up in your home and get ready to live like a third world citizen.
So I've heard that heat pumps don't work in cold climates. Is that true?
Oh, that's a good question. Mm-hmm. So heat pumps historically have not performed well in cold climates. And it has to do, so we talked a second ago about the refrigeration process.
Right.
The heart of the refrigeration process, there's a compressor inside, right? And that compressor will run and run and run as long as its operating parameters are where they want to be, in the normal range. What happens with a heat pump when it gets cold outside is those conditions change. So the inlet pressure of a compressor is driven by the outside temperature because of how much refrigerant you can convert, all that kind of stuff. So when it gets cold outside, the inlet refrigerant pressure drops, and that all of a sudden, when you're compressing, causes a lot more heat and a lot more pressure, and you can actually destroy the compressor. Okay. So what do manufacturers do to prevent their compressors from being destroyed? They turn them off.
Okay.
So, now there's a problem with using heat pumps in cold climates.
How low temperature can a heat pump work? Okay, so what they're asking is you got a heat pump, and it's like an air conditioner, but it can heat too, right? So when it's heating, it's taking heat from outside the house, it's pulling it inside to heat your home. But they start to lose efficiency as the outside temperature gets lower. Okay, so they're really great in shoulder season, not so great on January 14th when it's 10 below outside. Between 25 and 40 degrees, depending on your model, that's when they're going to start losing efficiency. The closer you get to freezing, the lower it gets. A lot of conventional heat pumps are not going to go below 5 degrees. Between freezing and 5, they've lost a lot of efficiency.
And this time I want to talk to you about a car crash that I can see happening in slow motion coming your way. And basically, the car crash I'm talking about is heat pumps, and specifically the government's idea of incentivizing people to take up the heat pump technology by pouring £11.8 billion of your tax-paying money into the pockets of companies who are going to install heat pumps. I've installed heat pumps, and I can tell you a lot of people are very disappointed after a couple of years of running and seeing their high electricity bills and the fact that their house is not warm. So that's a real kick in the goolies, if you like, paying 3 times as much for your fuel bills and having a colder house to boot. So bring back my gas boiler. No. You've taken the government's money and you've got rid of your gas boiler, because that's the only way you're going to get that grant, is if you actually junk your gas boiler out. Because don't forget, that's the name of the game. We want to save the planet. We want to get rid of gas boilers. Now, actually, I would love to get rid of my gas boiler. I have installed heat pumps. I've put in ground source heat pumps. I've put in air source heat pumps. And if they worked, I would be the first guy to be taking out my gas boiler and putting in a heat pump. But they don't work. They don't work well enough in our housing stock. Sure, they work in Scandinavia, where they've got these lovely houses which are beautifully insulated, draft-proof, triple glazed. You can heat those houses with a light bulb. You don't even need to put any heat on. So heat pumps are wonderful in those situations. So, okay, the argument goes that all we need to do is increase the insulation on our houses, put in the draft proofing, generally raise the standard. That's a bit of a pipe dream, if you like, because a lot of our houses are very old, very drafty, and they heat leak like, some of them even got solid walls. Haven't even got cavity walls, let alone cavity wall insulation. So we've got to spend a vast fortune bringing our houses up to scratch so that we can install a heat pump, which at best is going to give us 2 for 1, if you like, somewhere along that, averaged out over the year and the heating season. Because don't forget, you've still got to heat up your hot water. Very often you'll find that a heat pump won't heat your hot water up to the temperature you need it. And don't forget, you've got to heat it up to get rid of Legionella. So some of these heat pumps have a cycle in there where they switch on an immersion heater to top the water up. So you're feeling the pipe thinking, oh, it's lovely, all this is coming out of a heat pump, but actually it's not, because the heat pump has got a little immersion heater in it which is topping it up. So it's cheating, really.
Okay. So what do manufacturers do to prevent their compressors from being destroyed? They turn them off.
Okay.
So this is what our government's focusing on. This is the whole point of Biden and all these fools that they keep putting in these positions of power. The downfall really started, well, there's always been a downfall, but I mean, it's never been ramped up as much with Obama in office, the stuff, because of course they could use him and then they could say, well, if you question stuff he's saying, you're a racist, et cetera, et cetera. They've used all sorts of psychological acts to, psychological operations to convince people of the climate agenda. Then on top of it, making sure you don't ask questions about it. So they quietly keep doing this stuff. They quietly keep meddling in your life, and people think it has something to do with the climate. It doesn't. So Biden's using special wartime powers to boost U.S. production of heat pumps, which you heard do not work efficiently. Okay, it's cute if you're, if you got a little camper or something like that. But if you're living in a home with kids, you want to, and you're the man of the house and you want to protect your children, because, man of a house, if you have kids, you should want to make sure your kids have food, water, heat, air conditioning. Okay, those are things that are important. A roof over their head, yeah, all that stuff. Okay, and if you start giving into stuff like this, you're going to look around and go, I did everything right. I did everything I was. And the government's going to be the one who's preventing you from taking care of your own family. They want to make sure you're not sufficient and independent of them. And they want to be able to control every single thing in your life, which we can see right now happening. Do we not see them trying to meddle in everyone's lives more than ever? If anyone didn't see on my other channel, United Uprising, this week I uploaded a video. I recommend you check it out, just from the Instagram account of the World Economic Forum, where they're saying that 90%, I think the number was 88, but let's just say 90% of people want more government involvement in their lives. They want more government overreach, but they're really saying more help from the government, more control from the government, they want them involved in their day-to-day, every minute life, they're claiming. That's how funny this is getting. And of course, they know that that's all bullcrap, but they just continue to regurgitate fake statistics and then people think it as truth. Nobody wants these people in their home. Nobody even wants these people to exist at this point because these people have all violated every single oath that they've taken to the civilians of this country. And of course, they haven't violated their oaths to their secret societies because that's why they're doing what they're doing, which is enslaving us. They are all guilty of treason. I cannot even believe we're at a point where we're looking at these people like they're actually really politicians or people are siding with a left or a right instead of just saying, hey, Constitution's in place, the Bill of Rights, these things are in place so that this doesn't occur. Yet it's occurring. So under Joe Biden, the grant under the Emergency Authority of the Cold War Era Defensive Production Act, DPA, which Biden invoked on a basis of climate change to boost spending on clean energy technology, the president's using his wartime emergency powers under the Defense Production Act to turbocharge U.S. manufacturing of clean technologies and strengthen our energy security, said Biden's national climate advisor Ali Zahidi in a statement. Heat pumps can heat and cool homes and businesses more efficiently using thermal transfer, which moves heat from one area to another rather than generating new heat. False. Okay? Maybe some of that is true about how heat pumps actually work. But do you not want to generate new heat? Now, why would that be a bad thing to generate new heat? You know how like when you have wood, okay, let's all just close our eyes, right? Because some of you might not ever have even lit a fire before. I don't know. Okay, but just imagine you're by a fireplace. I'm sitting next to you, my arm around. No, we're by a fireplace. We're out at a campsite, right? What happens as the fire burns? It starts to go down and down and down. And then what happens? Well, it starts to get colder, right? Someone's like, hey, put some more wood on there. It's getting cold, right? Oh, okay. And they go and they get more wood. And they set it up, and the fire raises back up, and everybody gets warmer again, and they keep putting wood on the fire to keep the heat producing, right? Well, apparently that's a bad thing now. We don't want to generate new heat. So instead, what they want you to do when the fire's burning out or dying out is, what? Oh, they just want you to think that everything's going to be okay because heat's going to move from one area to another. Now, we know heat rises, and in a lot of situations with wood-burning stoves, what people do is they put fans in there, right? So if you have a wood-burning stove in one room in the house, okay, you might, a lot of the stoves now come with fans built in. You would turn the fan on, and the fan would circulate the heat, right? I know other people that have used like, what do you call those things? Like, that people used to put around their necks. They look like they're metal. I can't think what they're called off the top of my head. Like you've seen on Sopranos, the Italians sitting outside the meat shop trying to get a tan, Paulie walnuts, etc. Well, they would put stuff like that around their home, and it would deflect heat right throughout the home. So that is true, right? You would use stuff like that, but you would need to constantly have something generating heat. And they don't want you to generate new heat. Because once the fire goes out, it don't matter how much stuff you have to keep the heat in there, right? They're like, oh, this will keep the heat inside. Okay, well, are you making sure that, how insulated the home is so that it could keep the heat, et cetera, et cetera? No, they're not. They're just going, oh, we don't want to generate new heat. Okay, we're going to make this move from one area to another. And by the way, when it gets below 5 degrees, and that's not even the truth, when it gets below 32 degrees, these things tend to fry out. They don't have enough power to generate heat. Okay, they will go out. I mean, you don't hear any of these HVAC guys over the years ever, unless you look at them and you're like, oh, this is a real lib, right? The majority of them, because they don't care about politics, they're HVAC guys who are just trying to give you the right information. They're all like saying the same stuff, that this stuff is crap. You do not want this. If you live in Canada specifically, they're like, don't get one of these things because you're going to freeze out. This thing ain't going to work when it hits regular winters there. They're like, yeah, but it's good for the spring and the fall. Well, nobody needs this stuff in the spring and the fall for the most part, right? Well, of course the government wants to chime in and do this. And again, don't forget, right now we have global warming, but ice age is really a big part of this, that things are going to flip the other way. From the get-go, before there was even global warming, the mind control of global warming for you young kids out there, they were doing the same exact thing with Ice Age in the 70s. Time magazine, all the magazine propaganda covers were pushing an Ice Age. Then they flipped to this. But we have programming in place that tells us they're going to go back to an Ice Age. Look no further, the video I did on the latest Ghostbusters film. And I don't know if that's on this channel or my other channel, but I did a video of the latest Ghostbuster movie. What does that have in it? Oh, well, it's about, they're combating ghosts. No, they're combating climate, folks. And they're having ice ages, right? Deep freezes. Day After Tomorrow, all these movies we've seen over and over and over that show us a potential ice age. So, of course, in the event that there's an ice age, you'll want a heat pump, so it doesn't work and keep you warm. And we're going to be worrying about the climate so much. Of course, when the ice age hits, they're going to blame it, of course, on people having gas burning stoves and lighting wood fires. I'm sure they'll be so dumb at that point that they'll say, there's an ice age, but don't light that wood and start a fire. It's going to affect the climate. Look what we're already in, right? And these people still won't know what's going on because, well, they never really did know from the get-go. So Biden and them are pushing forward, again, with all these things that people don't question, like, the Defense Production Act. It's something they're bringing. Natural gas is primarily composed of methane, so, American homes use it, and it's dangerous, and it affects the climate, And what's the other thing they want to make sure, right? Anyone out there with a generator, most generators now, all generators, really, let's be real. There are some generators you could run on solar power, right? But when they're blocking out the sun, how is your solar power thing going to work? If you're not familiar with how they're prepared to block out the sun, I've got tons of videos on that too. I don't know where they are. They're probably on the website, Uprising Revival, but they're trying to block out the sun. Bill Gates and all these guys have talked about how we need to block out the sun. But even Biden said we need to block out the sun. Now, why would we need to block out the sun? Because we're heating, the Earth's getting too hot, right? Well, then how are the solar power things going to work? They're not. And then we're going to remove natural gas too, because that's dangerous, right? So your generator or anything else isn't going to work. So where are we going to generate power from? You're not. You're going to get rations of power, rations of food. You're going to be showering once a week. You're not going to be visiting mom, dad, or grandma anymore. You ain't going to be visiting friends because that's not going to exist because they're going to tell you that everything's fine. You have your friends on Zoom, right? Because they just conditioned you. Like how many people now are so conditioned that they want to do everything on their technology instead of meeting in person? Like we could just do it on Zoom. You don't have to go to a doctor anymore. You can still meet them on Zoom, right? This is all stuff that's put in place for this. And the climate agenda is going to be tied into it. So many people miss the boat on this climate agenda. They're literally like not paying attention or they don't get it. Okay. This is when we talk about global imprisonment, when we talk about, the video that I did on the other channel I've kept linking up over here today about the line. Okay. The whole mindset of getting people into that Saudi Arabia prison is the climate. They're selling it as environmentally friendly. That's the point, right? We all need to get in here. It's efficient. We won't have to worry about this or that. We'll all be in here. We'll all be safe, tucked away in this cell, and you can't escape because you'll run out into the desert and you'll die. So have fun being in this huge prison. Look, there's a beach over there. Isn't that nice? Lock me up. Right? The idiots will fall for it like they fall for everything else. Right? But the climate agenda is tied into global enslavement. That's the purpose of it. It has nothing to do with the climate. Okay, why do you think they gaslight people? They love showing us, by the way, all these people who go to museums and throw paint on stuff. They never end up even going to jail. It's pretty funny. And I mean, a lot of the time they're plants. But again, what happens is they put these plants out there, they put them on national television, then the idiots see it, and then they go and copy it, just like everything else, because they can't think freely and they need people to tell them how to think and how to act, which is really what the celebrities do for them. So the climate stuff gets pushed down their throat. They have no idea what they're even talking about. They just repeat stuff about emissions. You'll hear these trigger words, carbon emissions and methane. And they don't have the slightest clue what's going on, nor what's coming. And some of these people are so warped that when it comes, they're still going to think it's better to die freezing to death or for your kid to die freezing to death than you to put on a stove to heat your home, to heat your family, or cook food. Okay? Because they're spazoid psychopaths who are now technically narcissists, LGBT narcissists. So we have to look at all this stuff day in, day out, right? I just talked about the stuff with the deer, the zombie deer, which is just another story, again, that's out there about how they have ways to regulate what you're going to be able to eat by saying, hey, we're going to have to wipe out a lot of these deer because this virus is spreading. You can't hunt these deer, right? We got to cut more venison or whatever it ends up being. Cows will end up getting it. We got to take meat off no meat. There's not going to be meat this winter, right? Because they want to control the food, okay? Then what do they want to do? Control your home, control your AC unit, control everything in your house, your heat, how often you're allowed to use electricity, how often you're allowed to shower. Does it sound like a prison cell? Because this is exactly the life that prisoners lead. They get a little bit of recess time. They get mandated shower times. You can't just go take a shower. This is all the stuff that they're going to do to us. And then they smile and they say it's the name of climate, and they know people are too dumb to question it. And when they do, what happens to them? They get thrown off the internet, and they have to continually try to get the word out to people because they have control and reins over all of it. It's corporations like Google. It's corporations like Coca-Cola. It's government officials, all of them working together. Amazon and Bezos, All of them are working together for global enslavement. These people that everybody admire, everybody thinks they've gotten where they've gotten because they're talented or they've gone, they are the wicked, the Bible references. These people are beyond wicked, so wicked that it cannot be comprehended by somebody who, a regular person, right? It's hard for us to comprehend, even with spiritual discernment, how wicked they are because it's so sick. And every day we hear more stories about these people. So this is them meddling in your life, right? People will hear this and be like, that sounds fine. We'll do heat pumps. And then I'm sure the propaganda will start filling up about how people who talk against heat pumps are conspiracy theorists. They don't know anything about heat pumps. That's what they do every time, right? They'll make sure if you search for anything on heat pumps, they'll put disinformation out. When if you ask anybody with a heat pump, especially somewhere in the Northeast or somewhere in Canada or anywhere that it gets cold in the winter, Wyoming, Montana, they'll be like, oh, you can't have that out here. What are you like? They'll call you like what are you from the South? You think you can have a heat pump in Montana? They'll laugh you out of it. They'll be like, just get out of here, man. This guy, what are you joking? You doing some type of candid camera thing here? What are you doing? Oh, you're really putting one in? Okay, this guy, they'd be the talk of the town, all right, because they would look at you as if you're completely stupid, which most people are. So they don't want you to know that these things are not efficient. They will put propaganda out there to tell you that they are, but they're going to continue to try to meddle, removing gas, okay, from your home. They're going to remove stoves. They're going to remove wood burning stoves, all of it. All of it. And then when everything is electronic and everything's run through electricity, they'll be able to control everything. And idiots out there are like, that's not how it goes. It is exactly how it goes. That's why the climate agenda is the most important thing to be aware of, okay? I'm sure you've all heard the jokes about, being taxed. We get taxed for bubble gum. And I'm sure you heard someone say, they're going to tax us for air. That's the point. That's what it is. They're going to tax your what you breathe, right? But it's not about money. It's about imprisonment. Because when they tax you on what you breathe, then you don't leave the house because you're only allowed to leave the house for X amount of time. And every second you go over, you'll be taxed, okay, and eventually arrested. And by arrested, it means you'll just be thrown back in your cell, which is now your home because all the technology there has been placed there to keep you a prisoner in your home. Does it make sense yet? Should be. Hopefully people are waking up to it. If not, I don't know what to tell you. A reminder, please subscribe to my other channels if you haven't yet. I am not positive how many more of these I'm going to make. As I see the numbers dwindling, I could see the writing on the wall. And that's perfectly fine. Life moves on. So I recommend you sub to the other channels, United Uprising and Call for Vengeance now if you haven't. I don't know if I'm going to have many more after those two or what I'm going to do. I'm going to take it day by day. But I recommend you sub to it. And eventually I'll stop bothering people with subscribing to the channels when they eventually do subscribe. Or when I'm eventually gone, then you don't have to worry about it. But those are linked below. And I hope to see more people on the website. Uprising Revival. No matter what happens to me, I will be on the website. Hell or high water, as long as I'm alive, as long as that website's up and running, I will upload there. So if you do want my content for a good period of time, I recommend you join the website now, uprisingrevival.com. I thank you all for being here. Hope you're all well. God bless you as always and your families.